Hello everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And it's number 213 in Sounding the Shallows.
That's a very big number, isn't it?
It is, and it's been an endless, what has it been? It's been the elections and all that, and also the football.
Euro.
For those who aren't in Europe and don't know what's going on, the battle for the European Cup is on. And England are going to be playing in the final on Sunday.
Yeah, which is quite unusual, really, isn't it? But it has been a very strange period.
Actually, let me just say, it's the second year in a row that England have been in the final of the European Cup.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I thought it was something to do with it being on foreign soil.
Well, it's the first time they've done it on foreign soil.
But there you go. Yeah. I knew I was saying something rather about football. Oh, golly. But it's been a very interesting period with the election and everything, because it's one of those opportunities, and what is there in common between a general election and the football? And I think it is that people join a side. You know, they make a decision, and even if they're not 100% sold out about it, and I know loads of people are certainly not sold out to the football, you join something, you belong to something, you have an identity, you are a something.
You mean you subsume aspects of yourself in order to be part of something that everyone around you is joining in? I think that's
yes,
true.
I think that's true. And just for a little while, just watching the crowds, whether it's at Wimbledon or it's the football or whatever, watching the crowds who really believe for that little while that the most important thing is what is happening in front of them. I'm not sure that quite came over in the election, but it certainly did watching.
Well, I think it did when the results came in.
Yes,
I must say, for me, I mean, I'm a fairly basilisk type person. I don't leap about. But when the winning goal was scored,
you almost leapt.
I didn't know. I came out of my chair and I shouted, and I mean, for me to exhibit that amount of emotion is quite unusual. But you say that it's for all sorts of reasons. It isn't actually, oddly, it's not just belonging. I don't think, although I love England doing well, but it's also because of all the stuff to do with the manager and the team, and you feel you've got to know them in a different way, and feeling for them as they fight and struggle and work hard to produce whatever all the people at home are wanting for them.
Yeah, and I mean that applies to any team playing any sport anywhere in the world, doesn't it? Really, you see people in tears afterwards. You see men and women who've just battled through. And they're just sitting in tears because it didn't happen. The magic didn't happen. And that's also a form
of unity, isn't it? You weep together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
so how did that affect you, apart from your momentarily nearly leap?
Well, no, it was a leap, actually. I'm proud of my leap. It doesn't affect me long term, the football. I was just very... if I'm honest, I was very pleased for the manager that, if anyone criticises him, he says, sorry, you can say, are you talking about the fact that we're in the final of the European Cup? Or is it something else that's gone wrong? I mean, there are problems sometimes with the team, but I was very pleased about that.
So do you think that after one of these moments, there's an inevitable sense that, but I'm not there. I'm not part of it. I am where I am. I mean, you've been talking quite a lot recently, haven't you, about the problems of your mobility, meaning that you are physically quite isolated, really. You can't just go and do.
That's right. But first of all, I'm not a joiner, as you know.
Well, that's true.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love being with people. People energize me. I love listening to people. I like the things we do when we work with people. I'm not very good at being a jolly part of anything. I think we mentioned before at Scargill, where we worked in the early New Year things, we had Ceilidh, which is, for those who don't know, is a kind of dance going on in one area, and it was advertised as being miserable with Adrian Plass in another room. And we had a great time being miserable. But
they had a great time in the Ceilidh, can I just point out?
I am not good at simply slotting into group activities. I never have been. And I think actually it's taken me most of my life so far to accept that, in one sense, and some people will know what this means, I am a little bit odd. I mean, I have some odd shapes in me that don't always work in certain situations.
That's a different sort of isolation, isn't it? Where you can never quite run with the crowd.
Well, the odd thing about it is, every now and then, someone gets me. I don't want to make a big thing about what they get. I mean, I'm not sure I got anything very worthwhile getting, but every now and then, someone gets me. And I remember this story fascinated a friend of mine who suffers in the same way. I remember going with someone who I got on with really, really well, and because he appreciated things in me, he brought stuff out of me, and I became more than I thought I was, and it was a wonderful thing that happened. So we went round to visit a friend of his. He and his wife and I went to visit this other husband and wife, and I was dumbstruck. I couldn't feel or see anything to say or do that would fit in with the ethos of the place I'd gone to. And my friend, who had a very good sense of humour as well as obviously being slightly annoyed, and said, whispered to me, "Sparkle, damn you, Sparkle." And, I mean, we did laugh about it afterwards.
And did you?
No, no, I didn't. I didn't have the equipment. No. And I told another friend of mine about this who understood totally, and he remembers years later. Now he has remembered that phrase, "Sparkle, damn you, Sparkle," because I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness. I think it's probably a weakness. But the physical isolation is something quite new, really. I mean, in the old days, I don't drive, and you do drive, so we have good times. We go out and we do a lot of things, and they're very enjoyable. But I used to be able to just say, I think I might go out for the morning. So
I know. Well, it was very important for you. I mean, being on your own, but in a choice way, that you made the choice. It's what you would like to do, and that's very different, isn't it? I mean, for a lot of people, that choice, for some reason or another, has been limited, taken away. I mean, I'm thinking of somebody who comes to Scargill House who's lost a hearing. That level of isolation, where you have to make a tremendous effort to be involved with what's going on, because a combination of lip reading and hearing aids means some of it she'll catch. But that's a different type of isolation, isn't it?
Yeah. And that person comes there to be part of a group, actually, and really enjoys it. She's also not a particularly great group joiner.
No, maybe not.
But she can relate well to people there, and has managed to find ways to deal with the hearing problem, and is very popular. So that's fine. But no, it isn't just the journeying. You know, you could drive me into Durham, and I could sit in a cafe or something, and you could leave me there or something.
I just might.
Well, you're very welcome if you want to. There are lots of better, no. But I think it's more than that. It's the fact that being sociable for some people is they manage it very well. I think of my son-in-law who's got lots of connections with people and goes and does stuff a couple of times a week and has regular things that he's involved in. And maybe it's because over the last 25, 30 years, we've been so locked into the work we do and done so much travelling. And
so there's always stimulus, really. And
that's
you
right,
don't have to be part of it because you've come into it for a while. Yeah, that's right. So you don't have to have the commitment of long-term belonging.
Well, at least we've managed to stay with each other, haven't we? We are a very lively little group, aren't we? It was interesting the other day when we went out.
I'm increasingly thinking about taking you to Durham and putting you in a cafe.
Okay. The other morning we went out on a rather bleak morning and sat in a cafe we know, which we really like. And through the window you can see this huge grassy area, and there's a children's play area, and down below there's trees and stuff, and it's one of those places that has such a keen sense of its own identity. And it was the first time for quite a long time that we've been able to just go somewhere and sit. And you said to me, it feels like the old days today, because there've been a lot of things going on, but just relaxing into being who you are. I mean, at the very least,
but we're very lucky because we have each other.
Well,
I mean, even if we don't get on very well all the time, but we do have each other. I mean, you're talking about isolation, and I can think of quite a few people who we know well who would say, I would give anything to not be isolated on my own every day, working out how to fill a day, how to create a shape to this day. And of course, I mean, I was thinking of our daughter saying she never gets a moment to herself because she's a full-time teacher and she has a 3-year-old son, and that's the other end of the spectrum, where you yearn to have a bit of space and time to think and to be, but a lot of people have far too much time.
No, I think frozen isolation is something else, isn't it? We had a letter just this week from someone who we have got to know, who never actually met her, but we got to know her well, and it's just, I found it not heartbreaking, because that would be a negative thing, but to be allowed to understand what it is to be confined within your very tiny physical possibilities. And she was talking about how the electricity went down. And because she needs the electric contacts in order for her to survive in many ways.
To charge her phone so she can communicate at all. And
And although she has people who really care for her.
But
it's
she managed, even so, to be so grateful. She was saying that the bass note for her, and remember we were talking about the bass note, and for her it is love, it is that extra bit of kindness that she experiences when people go the extra mile for her. It's and for that little while she is not alone, and she knows that people care about her from a distance, but I don't know which is the worst sort of isolation. Is it that? I mean, that is extreme, or is it just when you know that, you know, I remember you writing something years ago, am I the only one? And it's quite a funny thing, and it's not. But seriously, I think a lot of people do go through that. Am I the only one? Am I the only one who doesn't feel they fit into this church? Am I the only one who it feels odd, like you said, feels different, can't work out how you learn the steps in order to fit?
We've known one or two people, haven't we, who are simply unable to understand how to relate to people, broadly speaking. And perhaps because I'm a bit odd, or we're a bit odd, it doesn't matter actually. But I've seen those people in social gatherings summoning up the courage to say something, to be one of them, and failing miserably because I wouldn't say silence falls, but the attempt to be casually involved with others is not a gift they have. No. And I don't suffer from that, because if I don't feel I'm in it, I'll get out of it, but you know, I'm all right. I don't. But
But
I find
it
that
is
very hurtful.
It is still true, isn't it, that there is not. I mean, we talk about multiculturalism. We talk about how it's okay to be yourself, how important it is to be yourself, but actually it isn't quite, is it? Whether it's within society or within church or within, it's not quite okay to be totally yourself, because sometimes you think, well, if people really knew who I was, they might not like me or they might not understand me. I wish, that I just think it's going to be in heaven, really, where people can really feel, it's okay to be me. Well, I hope that's going to be how
I think
it is.
many more people than we realise feel that
I think so
that if
too.
people knew I remember a few years ago, a chap we knew, who I'd got to know well, and we were getting on very well, and he had various problems, emotional problems, and he asked me one day if we could talk together, and I said yes, of course we can. And he told me about things he'd done or things he'd wanted to do that were repellent. And I know that, like small children do with small adopted children do with their adoptive parents, they test them. And I think he was saying to me, I want you to know what I really am, because then you can decide, like other people would, that's it, I don't want to know about that, or we can go on being friends. And I remember it wasn't too challenging, that, because I did sense what he was trying to do. He was trying to and I wouldn't do that. I don't think I'm not very good at bearing my soul, really. I mean, I'm talking.
But we were talking the other week, weren't we, Adrian? I was just thinking about exactly what you were saying, and we were talking the other week about, at least I think we were, about Themis, the goddess of justice, and the blindfold, and the fact that can create impartiality, but also can mean you don't see things. And I know in that situation, and in many situations, suddenly you see something that you didn't know, and unless we do share bits of ourselves in the right place, and with the right person, so that we can be known. I mean, God talks about that a lot, doesn't he? Being known.
Oh, I think being known is a huge privilege, to be with somebody who knows you. I think that applies to us, and it applies to some friends as well. It is a huge privilege. And I was thinking of Jesus, as I always end up thinking about Jesus, but for Jesus...
That's all right,
Yes, I know. To be who he was. I mean, if you take the things like God and man, coming from heaven to earth, having a task that would end his life in a precipitate way, and all those things that would have been totally inconceivable to people. After he died, the people who said, well, we thought it was going somewhere, but we see it wasn't. Living with that, even with those close to him, who he obviously loved, really. And I wrote this is one of the lyrics I wrote, which it's sort of about that, and it was about a puzzled disciple trying to understand and speaking to Jesus. And he says, you are young, filled with life, influential. Why on earth is your death so essential? And Jesus says, well, I'll live while I can, but I signed for the plan, and the plan has to reach its potential. And that loneliness, to know that you can't change that, you can't go back, at least if you're going to do the right thing, you can't change it, and that almost nobody who you are with, when they look into your eyes and you look into theirs, will have the faintest idea what you're talking about.
But on a minor level, that is true for all of us, isn't it? That's what I said about being known. I mean, that idea that however much people think they know you, they can't, because of the whole world that's inside your head and your heart and your emotions and your genetics and your your upbringing and all the other things that have made you you. You can only allow a part of you to be known, I think, at any one time. I doubt if there's anybody who is fully known.
Right,
and the thing about Jesus is we will refused to allow he was just a bloke.
Mm.
You know,
As well as everything else.
as well as everything else. But he was,
Yeah.
you know, he was man, and so. But he was also God, so obviously people couldn't read him completely. But I think there's always going to be part of us that is unreadable.
Yeah.
Memories and thoughts and things that are.
But some people can handle that okay. I mean, some people are very good at being part of things. If you're not, I don't know. I mean,
I mean, a genuine extrovert is given life. People give them life. Being with people gives them life.
Yeah, that's true.
I think, you know, if you're an introvert, and many people who do things like you do, you know, stand up and talk to people, they also wouldn't necessarily want to join in a ceilidh.
Well, one of my great fears, actually, is that having said this out loud, that I will see lots of invitations to join tennis clubs.
Go on.
And I'm absolutely no intention
maybe not a
of
tennis
joining
club,
things.
darling, because
No,
that would be a bit tricky.
Not just tennis clubs, almost anything. Almost anything. But I did, just quickly, I've mentioned before this young man, teenager, who, when we were all claiming to be, you know, violently Christian in our lives in the youth club in Tunbridge Wells, the one boy who stood up and said, I just got to say that I've never believed any of it. And I think, I suspect Jesus would have huge sympathy with him. And I hope, you know, somehow through his life, he said to that chap, I really admired what you did that evening, because you freed people from the chains of feeling forced to tell lies, really, about how you felt and what you believe.
I was thinking, Adrian, just you saying that, and I was thinking, well, I suppose what we're talking about is belonging to the odd club.
Yes,
belonging.
That's right, yeah. Welcome, odd club.
The pieces of jigsaw that don't actually fit.
Yeah.
The idea of a box of assorted bits of jigsaw that will never actually make a beautiful jigsaw.
And yet.
And on that note,
in Winchester Cathedral, in the west window, there is a window that was smashed to pieces, and one day, who knows, in heaven, that it might be put together again. Beautiful jigsaw. And they might do the same with us in the odd club.
Absolutely.
That'd be good.
Well, it'd be lovely to hear from you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yes. Bye bye, if you're on the odd club or not. Bye bye.